If you were lucky enough to live near your grandparents, there could be nothing better than just stopping by for conversation and sharing a meal on a chilly afternoon. We've rounded up a few of Grandma's go-to recipes for lunch. Enjoy! Ham salad is a pretty light meal that works really nicely as an appetizer. Overall, the dish tends to resemble chicken salad or tuna and egg salad, but the star of this show is ham. Usually incorporated into the dish with the help of chopped vegetables and relishes, it got really popular in South America and Midwest despite having originated in North America. It takes influences from the cuisine of British Americans as well. To bind the vegetables with the ham, cooks will often use just a dash or very minimum amount of mayonnaise, salad cream, or ranch dressings that fall into those flavor profiles. A popular brand was Miracle Whip, and some other trendy choices to add to the salad were celery, pickle relish, and mustard. Ever remember Grandma getting one of these out in her fine china bowl? The meal is truly a beloved throwback. So your typical idea of a cake might be a baked delight with flour and frosting, but what about fish cakes, such as crab cakes? They need some love too. Luckily, they have enjoyed their fair share of spotlight in the days of our parents and their parents, and they work in many ways. A nutritional snack to amp up your diet, something to pair up with a good dip and bread or other seafood, or just a delicious meal all over for munching on. Grandmas would always get to work on making their best fish cake with just simple ingredients like breadcrumbs and crab meat, and the fresher the crustacean, the better the cooking. These crab cakes made the rounds pretty regularly in places like Maryland and Ohio or Mississippi, where fishing for crabs was really common. Tuna salad has managed to stand the test of time pretty well, and it gets even more simple than ham salad does. It is great that grandmas back then were always around to shatter misconceptions around how salad is an incredibly bland and boring concept. The ways they made these salads would get even the most stubborn, protein-only diehard on the bandwagon. You would be surprised what onion, celery, some spices, and mayo can do to tuna. It is an incredible comfort food classic, and it works with freshly caught tuna or canned tuna. Back in the 1900s, basic dressings were most commonly used, but towards the late 90s, stuff like Dijon dressings also got really popular, and they only made it healthier because you would find it much easier to eat an extra bowl or two. Which do you prefer if you remember growing up with this? You must be pretty used to casseroles both from your mom's hands and your grandma's, but have you ever had a macaroni casserole straight from a veteran home chef of the 20th century? It can really change your view on the whole thing. This throws out all the typical casserole ingredients you might be used to, and you should look at this more like a pasta dish. Egg, milk, and some vegetables take center stage alongside the main star of the show, some classic macaroni. Some meats are used, but sparingly, and in the 1950s, people mostly skipped out on them. A thick layer of melted cheese on top with breadcrumbs and a side of ketchup. What is there not to love about this? It takes the concept of comfort food and cranks it up to 1,000. This next one is also a fusion of two different classics, so it is kind of a new take on both, just like macaroni casseroles. But have you ever thought about what a meatloaf burger would look like? It's not just something you might think about on a boring Saturday. It's a tried-and-true combo that has been around for ages. People may not know about it on a mainstream level nowadays, but it has been a local top 5 dish in states like Washington, New York, and Arkansas. Everyone in America loves a good meatloaf, and back in the days of our grandparents, it was one of the most common homemade lunches. What was one of the most regularly eaten takeout options? Burgers. Hamburgers, cheeseburgers, double patty behemoths, you name it. People ate it, and eventually they wanted to see what else could be done with the burger format, which works all too well. Lo and behold, the meatloaf burger made a name for itself rather quickly as a very filling and delicious meal to whip up at home. So Cobb salad was not actually made by a grandmother on the brink of innovation, but by Bob Cobb, who owned the famous chain of Brown Derby restaurants in LA and Hollywood, California. He made the chopped salad in 1937 and knew that America needed a salad with enough of the familiar stuff it was used to and enough of the healthy things it desperately needed. While they cannot take the credit for making it, grandmas all over the nation still rejoiced in delight when this fantastic dish did hit tables and restaurants all over. They finally had an easy, cheap, and quick way to get some much-needed nutrition into the family diet. All a Cobb salad takes is some boiled eggs, fried tomatoes, chicken, bacon, and other ingredients with a lettuce topping. You might think, why not throw in some spinach or kale, but we will get to some salads that use those too. For this one, lettuce worked the best with the textures of the meat that were in there. Speaking of much-needed digestive health, apple salads did just that and were a commonly used weapon in the culinary arsenal of parents everywhere. A delectable apple salad with Honeycrisp apples, dried cranberries, some pecans, and grapes would make for a unique salad that could easily serve as an impromptu appetizer for a party or a star on a well-equipped salad bar. A slightly sweetened mayonnaise dressing also did a lot for this dish. And if you did not vibe too much with mayo as a dressing, you could always switch to French or ranch dressings. People used all kinds of apples besides Honeycrisp ones, such as Fuji apples or Braeburn apples or Granny Smith apples. The idea was to commit to some serious trial and error because the small difference in apples meant a lot for the dish. Tuna salad made a fresh comeback, which helped extend its shelf life in the American homemade breakfast or lunch scene. The tuna salad everyone was already pretty accustomed to was reconstructed, this time with seasonal and tropical fruits like apples or cranberries and served in fresh pita sliced in half. Not only was this really healthy, but it was also intensely high in protein and carbs, so it helped you build that all-important muscle while keeping you full until a suitable time in the evening. Cannot give in to those post-meal munchie cravings, right? Tuna salad was great served as is, but some people would go a step further by baking it for a while too. So far, we have two solid options for salads with a sandwich variation for one of them, but what if you do not like protein in your salads? Want them on the sweeter, more dessert-y side? Then molded cranberry orange salads have your name written on them wrapped up in a bow. Some normal or raspberry gelatin and frozen cranberries, plus apples and oranges cut into wedges, would make for an incredibly sweet and delightful salad that had everything you wanted in it taste-wise. It also did wonders for your skin with a steady supply of vitamins and the benefits of cranberries. So not only would grandmothers make this for their beloved families, but they would sneak a bowl on the side for themselves too. Despite the ingredients being relatively easy to get, this was more of an upper-class dish popular in affluent areas. Remember when we said that there are salads that use spinaches and kale? Welcome to the wedge salad, which uses spinach, lettuce, and kale with a blue cheese dressing to make one of the most impeccable salads you have ever had. If a home cook ever wanted to stun the crowd at a summer party or a Thanksgiving lunch, this wedge salad was the go-to option for stealing the show. Plus, the best part was that it was ready in just about 15 minutes. For the finish, you would sprinkle tomatoes, onion, and bacon on each part of the salad to add a delightful and much-needed crunch to go along with the greens. Would you try this? It certainly meets a lot of health needs that people have. Croque madames involve layers of melted cheese smothered between freshly baked, crisp white bread. And to top it all off, there's an intense, smoky flavor from the ham. The best part about it is that it takes minutes to make, and it was one of the more fancy dishes that people would create when they were feeling like having a bit of an extravagant dinner. Everyone deserves to treat themselves sometimes, but for home chefs, especially grandparents, the biggest treat is often just seeing everyone eat up every last bite of what they've made. That was never a problem if croque madames were the dish being served, because nobody could resist this classic American sandwich that did more than its fair share of justice to ham. Poached or lightly fried eggs as a topping also made it work a lot better. And by the way, they are called croque madames because the poached eggs seem to resemble women's luxury hats in the 90s. This sandwich would go great with some fresh fruit fluff salad, which was perfect for all kinds of occasions. Casual brunches, bridal showers, birthdays, and holiday gatherings all felt a little incomplete in the northern areas of America without this fruit fluff salad. It was a pretty good summer dish, and it had an assortment of fruits that worked well and bounced off of each other's textures and tastes. Stuff like a creamy lemon base supplemented with fresh strawberries or blueberries was a typical standard for a fresh fruit fluff salad, but you could also get tropical with kiwis and pineapples. A lot of things worked, and the reason it goes great with a croque madame is because ham was usually used as a topping for this dish too, so it was a great pairing. Another wonderful appetizer was broiled Parmesan tomatoes, which were ready in about half an hour and were the ideal sidekick for some boiled or fluffy eggs alongside biscuits. Fresh, ripe summer tomatoes, filled with concentrated flavor, topped with an olive oil spray and kosher salt, sound like a really good time, not to mention the main selling point. The Parmesan cheese added so much flavor and style to this that it became a trending option in the mid-90s and was a frequent sight in many cookbooks in the States, especially those aimed at housewives and home chefs. Many of Grandma's broiled Parmesan tomato recipes are available online, showing how they have stood the test of time and continue to be passed down within families. Stuffed potato pancakes are a delight to have on their own, but they go great with any kind of syrup or dip too. And if you had grandkids coming over and did not know what to make, this was a surefire bet. Potatoes have always been a massive staple of American cuisine and culture, partly because they form the basis of many simple, affordable dishes. An example of this is how in the Depression there were several potato-based dishes that people regularly adopted, and they stuck in the cultural landscape of American cooking much longer after the dust from the recession had settled. In states like Ohio, Oregon, and Idaho, it is still common to see potato-centered dishes taking the #1 spot. So imagine the rounds they made back when they were truly in style. Taking a break away from the McDonald's and the Wendy's, stuffed potato pancakes usually have bits of meat stuffed in them like sausages, pork, or ground beef. And it is not only packed with flavor, but a great dish to eat if you are looking to bulk up too. Grandma does know best, after all. We have dishes here that are fit for parties, family gatherings, and lunches, but what about something that works as a lunch and can be served at a wedding? Cucumber party sandwiches are exactly what we are referring to. And if you thought a dish that could work on both your couch and next to your best friend in their wedding did not exist, think again. Maybe you do not think too highly about cucumbers, and we would not blame you. Recently, not a lot of hit dishes have made much use of them. That explains why these went out of style. But tracking back just a few decades ago, it was a pretty common sight to see a long table lined up with cucumbers, layered between herb cream cheese fillings, lemon juice sprinkled all over, sitting in the middle of two perfectly toasted slices of bread. Ambrosia fruit salads are one of the finest ones on this list so far, and they had all kinds of fancy and fresh ingredients to get the party going. You would not think yogurt, mandarin oranges, pineapples, mini marshmallows, and coconut could synchronize so well, especially in a dish like a salad. But they were a crowd favorite for lunch dates and home cooking. Some whipped cream on the top made it a very creamy and delightful option to go for if you wanted to watch the calories and still enjoy yourself. Think of it as like a Watergate salad without the pistachio. Some Hawaiian home chefs would mix this with a typical Hawaii salad, which usually also had bananas and cherries, as well as cottage cheese. Which would you prefer if you saw both sitting pretty on a salad bar? Speaking of wanting to watch your waistline while still feeling you are eating food meant for humans, roast beef finger sandwiches were the go-to for that genre of food because they ticked most boxes nutritionally while also having an explosive and vibrant taste. Something between a mid-work deli sandwich picked up from the corner of the street and an aromatic beef plate with veggies made by your grandmother, roast beef finger sandwiches offered the best of three worlds: size, taste, and health all in one, since they were usually served at brunches or bridal showers in a min sandwich format. Health-wise, they gave you more than just a good dose of protein, and that depended on what you would use as toppings. You could use olives, peppers, or other spices, as well as lettuce, tomatoes, and spinach. How do you prefer your sandwiches to be, mini or otherwise? Perfect for themed dinners or Christmas lunches, sangria gelatin rings are about as high class as they sound, and they are as close as you would get to fine dining at home. Well, at least if you did not want to spend half your day or the night prepping for the meal. These were especially popular in 1952 as part of the menu for French-American or gelatin-based restaurants. The best part about these were that they were pretty easy to make, and they involved adding boiling wine to gelatin, then cooling it, adding in berries and grapes to finish it off after it was done thickening. Despite how it might feel too sweet, it actually only had around 117 calories, so you could demolish a bowl or three without worrying too much. Although most commonly associated with the 1950s, especially throughout Middle America, The iconic tuna noodle casserole was actually first created in the Pacific Northwest in 1930, and it was quite polarizing. People either hated it or loved it, and there was no in between, no, it's just all right, or, well, it's not so bad. People had very divisive beliefs because they just had not experienced something that fused like three kinds of things together like this. Noodles and tuna is one thing, casserole and tuna is another, but the three all together? Some considered it blasphemous to cooking standards, and some loved it, claiming that it was breathing new life into each of the dishes. Speaking of fusion foods, ever imagined a spring roll but with meat inside? Sausage rolls were more or less that idea brought into reality, and they worked just as well as they do in imagination. While most people thought the idea was at first a bit too British for the average American tastes, when people gave it a genuine try, they found that sausage rolls were a lot better than anybody was giving them credit for. Since their birth, they would use ground sausage meat instead of sausage encasing, and they were like a better version of pigs in a blanket. More like a proper meal than a munching snack, but depending on the size you would go for, they could work well as both. With that, we wrap up our list of forgotten foods that our grandmothers once fed us. Give us a like, subscribe, and let's keep those memories alive.